Bumindeka, my name is Keisha Yusuf.
Hello, my name is Marakona.
Kaya, my name is Lina Tilaan.
Yung Malundi, my name is Natalie Natasha Masogo.
Gurumba Biki, my name is Monica Lateka.
Hi, my name is Kania Sumayo.
In 1770, Captain Cook's member was the first party that wrote the Australian language material. They saw Aboriginal Australians at Botany Bay. Several members of the party wrote word lists in Gugu Yimidir. On the other hand, Sir Joseph Banks recorded 180 items in all. After comparing their list, around 60 words that they believe were in the proper meaning. 1820, Captain P.P. King visited the Endeavour River and obtained a vocabulary that accorded well with Cook's. Then, when Aboriginal tribal lands were invaded in 1788 and a convict colony established at Sydney Cove, Governor Arthur Phillip carried a copy of Banks' Australian vocabulary to help his communication with the native. But it wasn't said which area of the language were used. So when Philip used some of the vocabulary, he found out that it didn't match because the native didn't understand what he said. The lack of correspondence between the local language and Cook's Banks vocabulary had been a mystery for 3 years, until Philip led a small exploring party. As Philip resolved, he found out that some natives used their own language. As the colony grew, little interest was evinced in Australian language. The missionary L.A. Threlkeld arrived in 1825 to open an Anglican mission for the Aborigines at Lake Macquarie in order to produce good grammar and gospel translation. Through his mission, he found out that many diverse languages or dialects, but they were not taught worth the trouble of learning. During the 1820s and 1830s, new colonies were founded in Western Australia, South Australia, and Victoria. There was more interest in Aborigines and their languages, which led the government in London to have concern about maltreatment. So they made an appointment to protect the Aborigines. In the early years of the other colonies, there was some excellent linguistic work by all sorts of people. Settlement swept into all parts of the continent, following discovery of gold and the opening up for new pasture for livestock. So the Aboriginal Australians were pushed out the way from their places. There was no interest in their language. Then around 1875, things began to change. Expansion exploration had fertilities in most regions, and those Aborigines who survived in the settled area began to be treated better. In 1974, there was a School of Australian Linguistics in Darwin Community College. Its purpose is to train native speakers of Australian languages as linguists, so the nature of Australian languages would be better understood.
In Australia, there are more than 250 indigenous languages, including 800 dialects. Each language is specific to a particular place and people. So collectively, Australians have more than 200 spoken languages. The 2011 analysis of language spoken at home indicate that majority of Australians speak English only as compared to non-English speakers. As a result, about 1 million migrants cannot speak English, which is a huge number, especially in a country of about 20 million people, out of which 15%, about 3 million residents speak a second language at home, which is English. As you know, Australian English and British English are similar, but the former has a colorful vernacular called strine thrown in for good measure. Also, the Australian English comprises of many words with an Aboriginal descent. Since the people cannot decide on which English to use, misspellings such as labor, labure, and program abound. Besides, many words used every day in the country have different meanings to Australian, unlike other English-speaking countries around the world. Aboriginal languages spoken in Australia. Aboriginal languages are believed to have originated and evolved from a single language family which comprised of 700 dialects. Out of those 250, only 20 survive today, and they are spoken regularly and also taught in schools. The most common Aboriginal language is Creole, which contains many English words with different meanings and usually spelled in a phonetic style. Tasmania or Palawa languages of Australia. Tasmania languages were the indigenous language of Tasmania Island. The last record of this language as a means of communication was the 1830s, and the last full-blooded Tasmanian died in 1888. The last Tasmanian speaker died in 1905. Today, Tasmanian Aborigines speak English. Torres Strait Island languages spoken in Australia. Torres Strait Islander and the language-based Crow have two indigenous languages. First, the transitioning agglutinative Western Central language, and second, Merriam-Mir. Minority languages of Australia. Other minority languages spoken in the country include Italian, spoken by 1.4% of the population, Arabic, spoken by 1.3% of the population, Greek, spoken by 1.3%, and Cantonese, spoken by 1.2% of the population. There are also the Australian Yolngu Sign Language and the other Aboriginal sign languages in the country. Here we have table. As you guys can see here, first main languages, which is Australian English, about 80%. Second, indigenous languages. There are Tasmanian languages, Australian Aboriginal languages, and Torres Strait Island languages. Third is the minority languages. There are Mandarin Chinese, about 1.6%, Italian about 1.4%, Arabic 1.3%, Greek 1.3%, and Cantonese about 1.2%. And the last is sign languages. There are Australian Yolngu Sign Language and the other Aboriginal sign languages.
By and large, the white population of present-day Australia has little knowledge of the structure or nature of Aboriginal Australian languages. Moreover, they have serious misconception about them. If you strike up a conversation with even well-educated white Australian, you may hear that there's just one Aboriginal language and it has only a few hundred words, or Aboriginal languages don't have any grammar, or they have only a few score words, names for common objects, or even they don't really have a language at all, just a few grunts and groans. About Australian Aboriginal languages. Australian Aboriginal languages, family of some 200 to 300 indigenous languages spoken in Australia and a few small offshore islands by approximately 50,000 people. There is currently a resurgence of ethnic pride among Aboriginal peoples, and government programs that assist them in maintaining their languages and becoming literate in them have sprung up. Evidence of this ethnic and linguistic pride can be seen in the preference of many indigenous Australians for the use of such self-designants as Kori, also spelled Kori, meaning person, rather than the terms Aborigine and Aboriginal. Next, about classification and distribution. Australian Aboriginal languages are a unique language group, having no generally accepted genetic connection with non-Australian languages. Aboriginal peoples traditionally lived by hunting and gathering, and were seasonally mobile, but because each local clan was deeply attached to certain local sites of vital importance, permanent population movement seems to have been gradual. The linguistic map of Australia reflects stepwise migration rather than rapid military conquest and imperial expansion like those that stabilized the linguistic landscape of other continents. Language boundaries were marginal or irrelevant to political organization and were cross-cut by kinship and marriage networks. In thinly populated areas, such as the Great Sandy Desert or Western Deserts, chains of closely related dialects were spread over a wide area. In the more densely populated coastal and subcoastal areas, language boundaries were generally sharp, but bilingualism was common.
Grammar.
Australian language are of interest to general linguistics because of their unusual grammatical structure. Synthetic coherence is not created by word order but by inflection of verb, change in word form, the more grammatical categories such as tense and case marking or nouns. Accordingly, word classes such as adjective and preposition, which presuppose the existence of the noun phrase and prepositional phrases, are of equally doubtful validity. Many Australian languages share a case system that attaches accretive suffixes to independent nouns and accusative suffixes to personal pronouns. Because word order does not indicate which noun is the subject of the transitive verb, as it does in English, the ergative suffix is used to denote the actor of the action referred to by the transitive verb. Vocabulary and speech register. A particular interesting feature of Aboriginal language is the influence of kinship on special speech register. Aboriginal people, because they largely determine appropriate social behavior. Other kind defined category are designated for camaraderie, sexual license, or vulgarity. Some of the language also had, in addition to normal speech, a set of special register, speech style with distinctive vocabulary. The register for us in the presence of a mother-in-law or other affinities, for example, use high pitch, slow speech rate, and special honorifics and avoided question and imperative. Another use in joking relationship contain vocabulary for body insults. Cultural assimilation has made it difficult to study such register in contemporary life. Other special register occur in male initiation ritual. Another area of great cultural emphasis. The world period, for example, have an antonymic speech register reflect in extreme secrecy to initiate by which ordinary words are used to refer to their opposite.
Australian English was created by the first generation of children born in new colony who, due to a wide variety of accent, begin to speak in a distinct dialect of English. Australian English differs to other varieties of English language in vocabulary, accent, pronunciation, register, grammar, and spelling. It can be said that the Australian accent is a blend of the accent of the first white settler from the British Isles. In particular, Ireland and Southeast England, the Australian accent or varieties are not measured according to region. Rather, it is considered as a social-cultural phenomenon by linguistics. The three categories are broad, general, and cultivated varieties. And the example, Ansley, I get it from Virgin Blackpink. She is from Australia, she is my idol, and I really like her accent. So here we go. Hello is hello, fashion show is fashion show, my sister is my sister, let's go is let's go, Nora is no, Dora is daughter, Norway is Norway, water is water.
Go.
Hello.
3, 2, 1, go.
Attending a fashion show.
3, 2, 1, go.
A bunch of stickers.
3, 2, 1, go.
Probably my sister.
3, 2, 1, go.
Let's go.
3, 2, 1, go.
Because I picked up the phone and I tried.
The conclusion is, Australia has a diverse linguistic history with over 250 indigenous languages and over 800 dialects specific to particular places and people. The arrival of English speakers around 200 years ago led to the development of a unique Australian English dialect. Unfortunately, early European settlements nearly eradicated indigenous language, resulting in only a few surviving today. However, there is a resurgence of ethnic pride among Aboriginal people, and the government has programs to assist them in maintaining their language and becoming literate in them. The Australian Aboriginal languages are a unique group without any known genetics connections to non-Australian language. There are estimated to have been 200 to 300 distinct Aboriginal languages at the time of European contact, but the exact number is challenging to determine due to the problem of distinguishing dialects from language and the fact that many speech varieties become extinct before they could be recorded. Today, Australia is a linguistically and culturally diverse country with over 160 spoken languages influencing its society. English is considered the de facto national language, but it doesn't have an official language. In Australia, besides English, Mandarin is the largest non-English dialect spoken in Australia, followed by Punjabi, Filipino Tagalog, and Arabic. The Australian accents also differs to other varieties of English language and cannot be measured by seeing the area because it is linguistic phenomenon.
That's